Pesachim Daf Ches. How's everybody doing? Today's email comes from Shlomi Rosenberg from Munson. He says, tremendous compliment. We know that we call nature, the sun rising, gravity, air, atmosphere, etc., the ongoing miracles of Hashem. Since we get used to them and call it nature. Chacham have termed it Nes Tivi, constant miracles. I would like to express my karsa to Hashem and to you for another daily constant miracle. Every morning I awake to my favorite Daf Yomi on YouTube and multiple other sources. Start anytime day after day. Baruch Hashem, King Yirbu, and he wants to thank the whole crew that's behind the scenes. Thank you, Shlomi Rosenberg. Says the Gemara, how do you do B'dikas Chametz? If the sun comes in directly from a skylight or from a window without a glass, you could check directly from the skylight. But if it's indirect sunlight, you cannot check with that sunlight. Nachsadra, as we learned in Eruvin, is some sort of pergola that has 4 open sides, and the sun comes in from all sides. You could check with the sunlight in the entire Achsadra. In a chutzner, a yard, you don't have to check at all, because birds will come and take any remaining chametz. We know you can only check with a candle and not with a torch, even though for Havdalah, a torch is preferable, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is compared to a torch, whereas tzaddikim are compared to a candle. So you see, a torch is much better than a candle. What's the reason? The Gemara gives 4 reasons. First of all, a candle can get into the narrow crevices, easier to check. A candle gives off light to the front, where a torch only gives to the rear. A candle, you're not concerned you're going to burn down the house. A torch, you are concerned, so you won't do a proper b'dika. And finally, a torch flickers, a candle doesn't. We learned in the Mishnah, Chol Makayim, in any place that you put chametz in, there might be chametz, you have to check. What does this kol mean? Usually kol comes to include something. Gemara says yes. It comes to include a number of different situations. For instance, if you have a hole really high up on the wall or really low on the wall, you don't have to check, because typically you don't put chametz there. If it's medium height, then you do have to check. If you have a roof that's on an angle, you don't have to check. The roof on top of a closet, you don't have to check. Typically you don't put chametz there, but you have to check inside the closet. A barn, we have a lot of cows, they'll eat the chametz. No, not necessary to check for chametz. Chicken coop, same thing. Chickens are going to eat your chametz, don't check there. If you have a storage facility for straw, you don't have to check, because typically you don't bring chametz in there. If you have a bed, do you have to check under the bed? Depends how tall the bed is. If it's easy access under the bed and typically you put things there, check it. Otherwise, if it's low, you don't have to. If you have a cellar, a wine cellar, that in the middle of the meal, your servant will go down to refill wine, you have to check. Why? Because the shamish has no clue how much wine you're going to use during the meal. He could only assume, but in the middle of the meal, somebody's going to come, they're going to drink more, he's going to go get more wine, he might be holding a roll in his hand, he'll put it down, you have to check. But if it's a oil facility, the shamish knows exactly how much oil you need for a meal, no need to check there. Reb Chia says that in Bavel, since they drink so much beer in Bavel is like wine in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore your cellar for beer must be checked. The beer in Bavel was made out of dates, so it's not chametz. We have to check it just in case you left some bread there. If you have a room for fish storage, if it's for larger fish, you don't have to check it, because the servant knows exactly how many fish you're going to use during the meal. Smaller fish, you do have to check, because he has no clue. If you have a room for salt storage or wood storage, wax and date storage, all those need to be checked, because that's a place that you go in the middle of the meal to fetch some more salt and wood, etc. The Gemara says a statement, you don't have to stick your hand into a crevice to check for chametz because of the danger, the sakana. What is the sakana? 2 pshatim. Either we're concerned of a scorpion or the guy. What's the pshat in the scorpion? We're talking about a case where you put chametz in the wall and the wall fell down. Now scorpions like to hide out underneath these stones that fell down. If it's less than 3 tefachim where a dog could typically fetch it, then we're concerned that the dog might find it and you have to check. But since we're concerned of a sakana, the scorpion might bite you, you don't have to check it. But typically we have this concept of shluchei mitzvah ein nezakin. If you're doing a mitzvah, why would you be concerned that you'll have damage? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to protect you. Says the Gemara, in fact we see that if you have an ulterior motive, such as if you give tzedakah on condition that your son is healed, on condition that you go to Olam Haba, you consider the tzaddik gomer for that mitzvah of tzedakah. So we can't really say that he has an ulterior motive. In addition to checking for chametz, he's also checking, let's say, for a needle. But what we could say is that once he's done checking and the mitzvah is over, then he might continue to check for a needle. Then he has no protection, and that's the concern. And that's why we say don't check. Rav Yitzchak says we're not talking about the sakana of a scorpion. We're talking about the sakana of a goy neighbor. He'll see you doing something interesting, checking with a candle at night. He'll say, "What's going on here? You're probably trying to put a spell on me," and he'll go and he'll kill him. What about shluchim mitzvah in nezaken? We don't say shluchim mitzvah in nezaken in a situation where you put yourself in immediate danger, and that's considered immediate danger. Like you see, Shmuel Hanavi was concerned that if he goes to anoint David HaMelech, Shaul will kill him. That's immediate danger. Shluchim mitzvah in nezaken. That's why Hakadosh Baruch Hu had to give him an idea. Lie to everybody. Tell everybody it's not a lie because Hakadosh Baruch Hu told him to do so. Tell everybody that you're coming to be makriv a karba. They asked Rav, what about Talmidim that are coming to learn Torah? Do we have shluchim mitzvah in nezaken? Could they travel at night? He says, on my platers, I'm taking a chrais, don't worry about it. What about returning from yeshiva back home? He says, that I don't know. However, Rabbi Lazar said, I do know. Shluchim mitzvah in nezaken, loy b'hali chasan, loy b'chazir asan. Even on the way back home, there's no damage. In fact, we see this from the early regal. Klal Yisrael went to Yerushalayim. Hakadosh Baruch Hu promises them, nobody's going to touch your fields, nobody's going to touch your animals. There's not going to be any hezek. It says in the pasuk, nobody's going to. So if your animals won't be damaged, certainly human beings, if they're performing a mitzvah that they have a mazel, they won't be damaged. The pasuk promises us that on the way back also we'll find everything undamaged. When the pasuk says it's artzucha, it teaches us somebody that has land is mechuyev and alil regal. If you don't have land, you're not mechuyev. You could go be alil regal, but you're not mechuyev to. Gemara says something very interesting. Why is it that Yerushalayim doesn't have the most tasteful fruits called peres genoisar, and they don't have the hot springs of Tiferia? Says the Gemara, because Hakadosh Baruch Hu didn't want Klal Yisrael to talk about the wonderful fruit, and the hot springs. He wanted them to have the mitzvah lishma of aliyah l'regel. If there's a cellar, a wine cellar that you use during the meal, we have a machlokes b'shamai b'silal, how much you have to check, and within b'shamai and b'silal there's a machlokes. B'shamai say 2 rows on the entire cellar. What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda says it's 2 rows from the floor to the ceiling, 2 rows in. Rabbi Yochanan says it's like a chaf sofid, the end of chaf, 1 row in the front, 1 row on the top. We still say 2 rows that are the outer rows, which are the upper rows. And there's machlokes, do they mean the 2 outer rows or 2 upper rows? According to Shmuel, it's the 2 upper rows. According to Rav, it's the outer rows. And the halach is like Shmuel. Why? Because most Amoraim passing like Shmuel, most Tanaim, but there are many Rishonim that are not garish that halach is like Shmuel. In fact, halach is like Rav when it comes to Yisurim. Have a wonderful day.